The numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole story. When you see something that's not in line, ask a question, whether it's an uptick or a downtick, or there's new data all of a sudden. There's a new data feed within the books. Hey, what's going on? Tell me what's going on with your business.
You're listening to the Spotlight edition of The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Louis Prosperi. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I'm Louis Prosperi. Our guest is a senior manager at Intuitive, has over 10 years experience in consultative sales and relationship management in fields such as consumer goods, education services, healthcare, technology, and financial services. Adrienne Barrett, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Louis. So glad to be here with you today.
It is a pleasure to have you here. I am very, very happy to have you on this show because I think we're going to have some interesting topics to talk about. But before we start on the topics, I think everybody would like to know a little bit about yourself and what made you decide to take this career journey and where you are today.
Absolutely. So the first thing I always tell people is I am a native Texan, and you will always know a native Texan because we will always tell you, as I just did. And
good to know.
Yes, always good to know. And besides being a native Texan, I have spent the majority of my career in sales leadership, account relationship management. However, I started out in social work and working nonprofit. I actually have a bachelor's of arts in psychology and American studies, as well as a master's in social work.
Wow.
Yes. And while I was working in social work, because I quickly realized that nonprofit meant I also was not making profit. And I do like to buy shoes. I needed some help with my cash flow. And I was working part-time in retail to supplement. Right. And one of my partners suggested a move into sales. And from there, I started working at Bank of America. And it was not something that I intended. However, I realized that the skill sets that I had learned, the experience that I had had from my undergraduate, graduate schooling, as well as my time in nonprofit and social work, led me to a place of consultative problem solving, advice giving, listening, and really coming with a strengths and solutions perspective on how I addressed any challenge, whether it was a challenge I had within my goals, but more importantly, helping my book of clients and then going forward, my teams to solving our goals and looking at where those growth and development opportunities are. Fast forward, and here I am at Intuit working with the financial professionals that I think most everybody has in some form or fashion, whether it is your bookkeeper, your tax pro, or maybe both, and not necessarily, a banking or investment relationship. And so being able to come full circle and come to Intuit has really been quite the journey, and one that I'm enjoying because we continue to innovate and how we can serve our clients, again, who are the tax professionals and bookkeeping professionals.
Well, that is a very interesting route into it, to be quite honest. Social service, nonprofit, retail, and then to an organization into it. And what's interesting is none of that experience was wasted, right? It sounds like all of it tied in and made you who you are today, which is, I think, a pretty neat person, to be quite honest. That was really cool. I like that. I've had some nonprofit work too, and I agree with you. It's fun and rewarding, but it doesn't buy you the right kind of shoes. So I totally agree with that analogy, and it's at least you put in your time, right? So you did some nonprofit work, so that's good to hear. So what was interesting for me was the consultative and communication part. What I would like to do is go into something that you have in your notes of expertise, which is business and contingency plans. It's something that it's very important in business life, and particularly for bookkeepers and accountants to understand how that would work or integrate that into their practice.
Definitely. And this passion for mine around having contingency plans and also a business plan started twofold. One, I'm the daughter of a small business owner, and my dad always had a business plan because he worked very closely with his accounting firm, his CPA and his bookkeeper, because he knew that that was mission critical for the success of his company. And as a small business owner, he knew that his staff would have needs for vacation, for time with family, that a growing company was just as much a risk as a company that maybe was floundering or starting to wind down. And if you did not have proper planning in place and a full scope of, thinking through to a SWOT analogy, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats, he was not going to be well suited to manage anything, good or bad. And I think too, when one of his employees had a child come early, and what that meant for that employee having to take time off, and where my dad was able to pivot and to meet the needs of his business and their clients, but also so his employee could take the time he needed to be with his family.
Right.
So that was an early experience for me, and it frames you up. It really colors your perspective when you're a child, and your dad's, jokingly, the third child is his small business.
Right.
It colors how you see the world and where you see the importance of always having those plans. And for me, it was a positive thing. It made me realize why it is so important to always assess your landscape. And at the same time, it made me realize that and I didn't know as a child, of course I know now, those contingency plans, it's not just for when something goes wrong, it's also for when something goes right. It can change the needs and how, of the business in the moment, and then what your future plans are as well, and how do you stay ahead of that. And so when I look at the needs for business planning and contingency planning, I also have seen where small business owners who don't have a plan in place, or they don't think about what are their ultimate goals, what are they up against as they start a new firm, a new practice, a new business. And this could be in any realm, not only a bookkeeper or somebody who's hanging up his or her shingle for the first time to do taxes on their own. You aren't as prepared for what may happen. And a lot of times what happens is the growth, and businesses aren't prepared for that, because too much business can lead to failure. And I don't know if you remember, but when Groupon first started, there were all these small businesses that signed on with Groupon.
Yes.
And they would get so much influx that they couldn't handle the influx, and it could almost be their undoing. And Groupon had to partner with their small business audience to say, we need to put some parameters in place to make sure that this onslaught of goodness is not your undoing.
Right.
And then again, on the flip side, I saw that when I was in banking. I had a customer who had weathered some storms, literal and figuratively so. Again, small to mid-sized business owner, and did not have at the time a line of credit. In Texas, we call them HELOCs, home equity line of credit, against his property. And we had several conversations about it, and he didn't want to do it. And I said, let's just keep the door open here. And when he came to me to ask, at the time, his business had taken such a hit. He didn't have the credit score. He didn't have the financials needed to support the loan.
Right.
And we had to figure out solutions for him to get through that time, then to get to a point where he could take out that HELOC that home equity line of credit to have to support his business until his business could grow to the point that he could take out the business loans. And it was almost heart-wrenching for me as his banker, as that relationship manager, to say, I don't have a solution for you right now. And if we had just done a little bit more proactive planning, and it's not that moment that you're thinking, I told you so, but you're thinking, oh, I wish I had pushed a little harder. What could I have done better to help you? And then the next time, again, when something went wrong, he had that reserve.
Right.
And those are the moments that really stick with me, because I am that person who says, how can we find the solution? How can we find the win? We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. We all have opportunities. We all have threats. But when you sit back and you take that holistic view and you see the full landscape, all of a sudden you can get into the details that you need to come up with that business plan. What are my goals? And then the contingency plan. What am I going to do if these things happen? Because I see the opportunities. I see the potential threat.
Actually, that's actually fairly interesting, because it kind of goes into part of the theme that we have here, which is professional bookkeepers have two types of services or lines of service. One is what we call compliance or data entry services, which are the meat and potatoes to generate the revenue, right, or generate the information, right? And then the other side is the advisory component. And I think, Adrienne, if you agree with me or not, the contingency plan and the business strategy plan would be a good thing for a bookkeeper to assess and address with their customer, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And here's, Louis, where I'll take it a step further and I'll say, hey, Mr. or Ms. Bookkeeper, Mr. or Ms. Small Business Owner, have you taken the time to do this for yourself first?
Right.
Because I think oftentimes the people who are in these mission critical relationship services and anything around financial life, let's be really honest, it can get emotional. And to have that element of logic and planning and strategy and staying objective and neutral because you're looking at a plan is key. And those bookkeeping firms need to realize they have to take care of themselves first. You know, you think the adage, the cobbler's children have no shoes, or the flip side on the airplane, yeah. Right? Like you put your mask on first before the person who needs assistance. Mm-hmm. Those people in those relationship services, in order to take care of their clients, they have to take care of themselves first. And I think by having that plan, they can also share out their moments where they're willing to be a little bit more transparent or vulnerable, of course, in a professional manner, and to say, hey, I've done this too. Let's sit down and do this, because who better to help guide that plan than the person who has full scope to your financials and everything within that financial story. They know why last year you had a hit on revenue, and they know why this year you're accelerating to beat last year by 200%, because you don't just drop off your books. You tell a story, because when a bookkeeper sees a flag, they ask. When they see something different, they ask, because you just touched on it. There's compliance at play as well.
So I think one of your tips, because I was going to ask you, what tips and suggestions would you recommend to bookkeepers, and ask the questions when they see flags?
Oh, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. I had a boss, the best takeaway I ever had from this boss was, the numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole story. When you see something that's not in line, ask a question, whether it's an uptick or a downtick, or there's new data all of a sudden. There's a new data feed within the books. Hey, what's going on? Tell me what's going on with your business.
I love that quote. Numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole story. I have to repeat that. That's I like that one. Make sure you use that in your other talks too. By the way, that's a really cool thing. So
the next time I repeat it and my team rolls my eyes at me, I'm going to say, Louis told me I need to repeat this.
I think you should, because it sounds so. It makes so much sense, right? Sometimes the most obvious thing is something that you can't even see. I don't know, but I love that. Numbers don't lie, but they don't tell you the whole truth. I love that. I'm going to switch a little bit of gears here, because one of the things that you've had experience with in your entire career is literally people skills or customer service skills and team building. Tell me a little bit about team building, because professional bookkeeping services, once they get beyond the one person, right, they will have an assistant and another professional bookkeeper, and then eventually they'll have a team. Give us some of your learning on how to build the right team.
Wow, that's a tough one. When I think about building the right team, I'll go back to what I shared about the contingency plans. It right. starts with the firm owner. It starts with the bookkeeper herself. It's being true to yourself, and it's knowing where your strengths are and where they are not. We all have things that we do better than anybody else. And we all have things that either we just don't like to do it, or it is just not where we excel. And look for those individuals who complement you, whose strengths complement your strengths, but also whose strengths complement where your gaps are. There's a person on my team right now, and we joke that we are so opposite that that is what makes our successful working relationship. I'm the person that, Louis, if you said, hey, Adrienne, let's go camping at Lake Louise. Okay. I would say, absolutely. When are we starting? And my colleague would say, wait a minute, guys. Do we have backpacks? Do we have tents? Where are the water canteens? And I'm ready to go yesterday. And I'm already on that hike. And it's my enthusiasm and my big picture view, because I'm seeing that lake and I'm like, man, I'm going to get to that lake and I'm going to have the most incredible vista and Instagram opportunity. But then my colleague is saying, we need to make sure we're safe, and we need to make sure we've checked off our checklist. And you know what? He's right. And I'm right. Neither of us are wrong. Our rights don't mute each other out. He needs my enthusiasm, but I need his pause and his checklist.
That's really good. I love the compliment and fill in the gaps, which is really good, because when you start off as a professional, usually you're on your own, right? And you have to do all of the stuff until you get to a certain size where then you can expand, right? And that's probably the most opportune time to do that assessment, Adrienne, that you just indicated. What are my gaps, and what is the complements to continue to grow? And we're in the people business. I'm going to be honest with you. Professional bookkeepers, our key strength is the expertise and knowledge of our team, right? And the better the team is, the better the customer service is. So I really like that. So even though you said it was a difficult question, you answered it quite well. So I don't know if it was that difficult for you. I thought it was pretty good, to be honest with you.
Well, thank you.
So we're going to go into another one, which is all about the team and contingencies, which is what is, and this is kind of an obvious question, but I want you to take it further. What is the importance of systems and processes for a bookkeeping firm, or even for the customer that you're dealing with?
Wow. So I love process.
Right.
I don't always like the technology with the systems, those times when you think, why isn't this Google form doing exactly what I need it to do? And that was me earlier this week. But I love process and I love systems. And here's why. Process and systems provide us with consistency and consistent outcomes. And when you're in sales and you're in people management and leadership, you need to understand that those those consistent pieces of data are accurate, that my outputs equal my inputs, and I can trust them day over day, quarter over quarter, year over year. And I can see where, again, the numbers aren't telling me the whole story because I can trust the numbers. I trust how they get there. And that's where process comes into play. And when I think about people in bookkeeping and in tax and in compliance, and you touched on it, you said compliance and data entry is the meat and potatoes. It's where the money comes in for these firms. But if I asked a bookkeeper, if I asked my tax pro, hey, how much do you like entering all my data for my tax return? Or if I asked my dad's firm, how much did you love managing his books? Yeah. They're going to tell me they didn't. Right. You know what they loved doing? They loved problem solving. They enjoy the relationship and seeing that business grow, seeing an individual's net worth grow, helping them through their challenges, whether it's starting a family, going into retirement, buying a second home, growing their business, being able to hire more people. And you can truly offer a retirement savings plan or direct deposit on your payroll.
Right.
And when you have those consistent processes and systems and you're leveraging technology for that consistency and you get out of the manual, two things happen. Your time frees up. And when your time frees up, your attention span, your brain waves free up. And those are our two most valuable commodities as any human being on this planet, my time and my attention span. And when you have those freed up, you get to go in and to do the work that you just said we're all about. It's all about that relationship management. Accountants and bookkeepers aren't in it because they love doing tax. They're in it because they love working with people and solving problems. And we forget that.
That, Adrienne, that's very intuitive. As a professional in the accounting and business side of it, there are a few people that actually do love the tax. Not as many as people think, but the part that they love and enjoy is solving other people's problems. I mean, what I call it and what a friend of mine calls it is transformation, helping the business owner or individual transform their practice into what they want it to be. And I think you hit it right on the head there. That was really good, very intuitive. So with regards to systems and processes, are there any tips or techniques that you've used or you've seen people use that they can, either implement in their systems or utilize, even if it's technology, anything to help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's one that stands out to me above all others. And it is using technology to manage communications. I'm going to give a clue here as to how long I've been on this planet. But I remember when I had to physically deliver all of my paperwork to my tax pro. There, you could not securely send through email. There was not a portal. At the time, the tax pro I was working with, he's since retired, right, had a version of TurboTax that was literally called TurboTax Pro. Yes. And I remember taking him my papers that I had, made painstaking copies of at the local Kinko's, and just the technology wasn't what it is today. You couldn't scan it on your phone. There was no way to send it through a portal. And now being able to use a portal, I know that what I've sent is secure. I don't have to worry about anything getting lost in the mail. And in the last 3 years, you don't have to worry about mail delays or during or post COVID, as well as I can communicate with my pro in real time. And it's an issue of, hey, I got your W-2, but did you send me this other document that I need? I need your mortgage statement, or, whatever that conversation is. And using a portal is so secure. And to me, again, if I cannot guarantee the security of my clients' documents as a bookkeeper or a CPA or any type of accounting professional, I need to take a step back and ask if I'm set up for success. So that's number one. is where can you utilize communication portals to securely send and communicate with your clients and create that dialogue, and then get them into the habit of realizing where that saves them time. It saves the tax professional, the bookkeeping professional time, and it ensures efficiency and accuracy. And that is just mission critical again for all of this. And another tag on to that are, how do you capture signatures on documents? I was one of the people who bought and sold a home at the early days of the pandemic.
Right.
And everything that I did, because there were multiple offers before I found the house that I'm in now, was through e-signature or a DocuSign or a like process. And
Right.
that's a significant transaction that's happening. And so if we're comfortable doing that for real estate, why wouldn't we be comfortable doing that for items around what gets us to the real estate transactions, our bookkeeping, our taxes, and our financials?
I think the pandemic, to be quite honest, accelerated our understanding of doing more digitally and using technology to its fullest, because I agree. I think, I bought my house pre-pandemic, and we had to go to the lawyer's office and sign everything. And same with our tax returns. We would sign them at the office, and I think technology now allows us to do a lot of work digitally. But the key thing, like you said, is make sure that whatever you utilize, and particularly when it's sensitive data, is there's a level of security in place. You can't, maybe general email might not be the best solution in some situations. So I like that. That's very good. So Adrienne, is there anything else that that you would like to share with us today before we go?
Well, first, I just wanted to say thanks for a really engaging and informative conversation for me as well. I like the questions and having the opportunity to think through what sometimes you take for granted as you do day over day, but realizing just how important bookkeeping and tax work is for just peace of mind and for growth. And like you said, whether it's helping a business grow or helping individuals meet their goals, it always is remembering that having that relationship with your accounting professional, whether it's a firm or an individual, it's something that is a worthwhile investment, just like we invest in ourselves with personal trainers or tutors for our kids, or trainers for our dogs. Taking the time to invest in our financial well-being with a bookkeeper as needed, a tax pro as needed, or maybe both services with one person.
Sure.
That is just as important as everything else that we do for ourselves. We've heard a lot again through the pandemic about self-care, and I think of this as this is self-care for one of the most important parts of our lives, which is the financial aspect. And as I had mentioned earlier, money's emotional. We work hard for what we earn and what we do, and we all have plans, whether it's early retirement or a grand vacation, sending our kids to college, whatever that is, starting a business, selling a business.
Right.
And remembering that we need to take care of that, and investing in a relationship with an expert, that's a gift that we all should have, because it does help to take some of that emotional drain out of it. And like you said, people are in it to solve those problems, to create that relationship. And I know that's a relationship that I have valued in my lifetime. And I've seen, again, where it benefited my father. He gave me that advice, and it's benefited me. And it's something that I truly believe in, which is part of why I came to Intuit, because we're here to help power prosperity around the globe. We have a focus on small to mid-sized business. And those are areas that speak to my heart and to my experience and my journey.
Well, Adrienne, I got to be honest with you. this was a very good discussion too. What people forget, and I am so glad you brought it into the discussion today, is that people are emotional, right? And financial well-being is literally an emotional roller coaster. When you're doing well financially, you're usually happy, right? You don't see a lot of miserable, financially well-doing people, right? So I love the fact that you incorporate that into the discussion, because it is tied to emotion, and having experts to help you there and how you put it together is very intuitive. So thank you very much for your input and insight, and making it, I would say, very I can't even pronounce that word, real people-like experience. Because I was going to say humanistic, but that's not coming out right. I'm going to leave this into the play so it stays in there. But I really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you again, Adrienne.
Well, and thank you, Louis. Like I said, I've really enjoyed our time together, and I look forward to seeing the responses from people who are listening to the podcast and seeing what their stories are working with their clients as well.
Yeah, and then hopefully they can correct my word properly in the response and tell me how to say it properly. So that'd be great. So this was a very good episode. I want to thank Adrienne for joining us today. That wraps up another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye and have a great day.
You've been listening to the Spotlight edition of The Successful Bookkeeper with Louis Prosperi. For more information and to access the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening and have a great week.